Let's bring in ESPN Sportscenter anchor, noted Sixer fan, Kevin Neghandi. Thanks to our buddy Pete Thompson, by the way, who hunted him down for me. I said, Neghandi, big Sixer fan. I wanted to hear his reaction to what happened last night because, Kevin, as you know, the Sixer fans can be, well, the Philly fans can be irrational at times. Would you agree?
Yeah, Mike, obviously we can call our own a little irrational because we're family, right? How dare anybody from our outside world say anything? And shout out to Pete, a good man. And honestly, I didn't understand the panic coming into Game 5 because, listen, the Wizards won that Game 4 for multiple reasons. Because the Sixers didn't play defense, their intensity wasn't there. Tobias wasn't sharp like he was in the first couple of games. Ben was in foul trouble. So was Dwight Howard. There were a lot of other things going on, and the Sixers were still within a point or two away, and then the hack-a-ben became the narrative. So, I wasn't in any panic mode because – everything had to fall right for Game 4 to happen for the Wizards. Now, big picture-wise, some concern about Joel and his ability to play in the next couple of rounds. We'll have to see how that plays out. But the vibe I've got from the Sixers has been no panic. And that is a good feeling, and that's a feeling that has kind of calmed some of my fears. My friends and family, when they hit me up and they talk about the doomsday end of the world scenarios with the Hawks, I'm like, I think we're going to be okay. And I really believe it because the one thing that we've got is defense. And Trae Young is a special talent, but we've got one of the top 3 best defensive players in the league in Ben Simmons. And you could make a case probably top 5 right after is Matisse Thybulle. And Matisse would probably be in the top 3 if he was a starter. So I feel comfortable with the concept of our defense locking down in the next round against the Hawks.
Now, Kevin, I would love to hear, if you're in the cafeteria, getting ready for SportsCenter up in Bristol, and everybody's sitting there, and a Ben Simmons conversation comes up, what kind of conversations are going on? It's got to be such a unique thing of, did you see this last night? They didn't take him off the court. He did this. He missed the free throws. They're hacking him. He's the best defensive player. Can't take him. Kind of give us a overview of the polarization that is Ben Simmons.
Yeah, you will hear comments like he can't shoot, and why can't he figure it out after 5 years? And then you'll hear, man, he's really good at everything else. He's such a good defensive player. I don't understand why Philly is so hard on him. So I hear both. And I said this yesterday in another interview. You can have both. We don't have to be extreme here. We don't have to say with a broad brush that Ben is this and label him as a bad player because he can't shoot, or label him as a great player because he does everything else. You can say some nuance and context like phenomenal defensive player, fantastic facilitator because that offense moves with him on the floor. It's a completely different look with the offense because he finds the open man, even playing in the 5 spot to get double-digit assists. And at the same time, he struggles from the free throw line. So I think sometimes we want to paint this broad brush without any context or nuance. I think that's what gets, anybody in trouble when describing players.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, half the people are like, you got to get him off the floor. You got to get rid of him. You can't win with this guy. You'll never win with this guy. And the other half The other half kind of appreciates him for what he is. And then, of course, you throw the monkey wrench in that Joel Embiid is not here. And then, he has that game last night. But realistically, Kevin, if Joel Embiid is out for half this series, how do we feel?
I think it's potentially going 7 games. Because at least 6 games if he's out half the series. Joel does something that he settles everybody down. I think everybody finds their groove because there's no pressure on them to generate offense because Joel does it. He does it with and he can clean up. And the minute they need a bucket, they know, send it down low. The big man will be untouchable with a fadeaway jumper. So I think last night's performance was great because everybody knew they had to step up and they didn't want to continue the series. They've got to bring that same intensity. And how about Maxey? I thought Maxey was phenomenal with his energy. And we've got he's a special talent. He's a rookie, but he's a special talent that's not afraid to drive. I thought Seth Curry gave the team the moments to breathe with his outside shooting. That goes in so many ways when you can shoot that three from the outside. Not so much that it's a three-pointer. That's the easy way. It's the spacing around the floor. When you have that option, it changes the entire dynamic. And one other thing, Dwight Howard, I love what he does. I love the pickup. He's just got to stay out of foul trouble because if Joel can't go, we'll need Dwight at least 30 minutes on the floor, and he's got to stay out of foul trouble, especially early on in the game.
Yeah, I thought he gave them great minutes last night, especially 8 of 10 from the free throw line, which is something that you're not really anticipating. But it was his hard work and getting to the line and then making shots that happened. But this Hawks team, I kind of described it, Kevin, as your Friday night, you go out, a relaxing night, there's a two-man band playing. You're like, those guys are pretty good. Saturday night, you go out and there's a 5-piece, and you're like, now those guys were really good. The Wizards are the two-man band. This Hawks team is more of the 5-piece. They've got a little bit more pieces than that Washington team does. So it presents a lot more challenges. Yeah,
100%. And Trey's a lot more efficient than the future Hall of Famer in Russell Westbrook. Because, Russ has the ball in his hand, right? When Trey takes shots, 9 out of 10 times you're holding your breath because you think it's going in. And if Russ hit a couple of the shots and looks that he had in that game yesterday, it's a different story. Russ can really struggle from the outside. Trey doesn't struggle. So if Trey builds confidence early on, you saw what he could do in New York. He feeds off the emotion of a crowd. He's not fazed by big moments. He wants the big moments. My biggest thing with this series starting in Philly, the first 2 games, they've got to own the series at home, and they cannot give Trey any hope for that series to go 1-1 back to Atlanta.
The depth issue too, where you mentioned Trae Young and the other team, Beal, big problem, Westbrook, problem. After that, big drop off. Young does a lot, but they're complementary play. Like Capella, to me, I don't know if Joel Embiid's not there. They got a problem with Capella.
I agree, and I come back to Dwight Howard. He cannot get in foul trouble early on. They have a lot of stretch guys around. Yep. I think Collins struggled early in the series against the Knicks. He can be dangerous when he's feeling good. This is a young team that's fearless and is building confidence each and every game, and it's because of their point guard. I mean, he is a younger version of what Steph Curry is right now, where he can hit from any place on the floor. He's not shy about taking shots from anywhere, and he's also very aggressive in getting his shot off. So I think it all starts with Trey, but you're right. The Hawks have depth. They have options aside from, that two-man game that we saw with the Wizards, primarily one-man game with Bradley Beal. The Sixers will be tested defensively. I can't wait. I think the energy the Sixers will have will be great. I do want to see how Embiid will be progressing right now. I hope he's going to play game 1, because if he plays game 1, that's a good sign for where this series is going to go.
That would be a much added boost to this whole thing, because obviously the Nets-Bucks are going to take all the headlines. That's going to get – you guys are going to be covering that like crazy, I'm imagining, on SportsCenter, and the Sixers are going to kind of maybe be a little bit of a side note on this thing. But this one has the makings of being very fun, because the way Young entered into these playoffs this year, going to New York, doing what he did there, he's really kind of jumped on to another level, don't you think?
Absolutely. And, Mike, first off, I can assure anybody that's listening, on a SportsCenter that I'm anchoring, we will make sure that the Sixers will not be buried in the conversation. So I want to make sure everybody knows that, the producers – and, by the way, my co-anchor, Elle Duncan, who, her and I have a fantastic chemistry and banter back and forth. She's a diehard Hawks fan. So we're going to make sure that series is going to be discussed.
Right.
And I can't wait to place a bet with her tonight. So, I mean, Trey is one of those special guys, right? Like, he loves it. He feeds off the energy. He feeds off the crowd rousing him. He loved the big stage in New York. Let's not forget, when he was at Oklahoma, I mean, every single night, he was the main attraction when it came to the college basketball ESPN package. So he's not afraid of primetime games and saying, yeah, look at me and watch me hit this shot. And I think he showed it, how players respond on a playoff level is really interesting because each one is different. He's not afraid to miss. That's the difference between good players and great players. The good players, they'll hit shots, but suddenly they get tight in playoff games because they don't want to miss. The great players are like, I don't care if I'm going to miss this shot. I'm going to take another one because I believe in myself. And that, I think, is the difference. And you could put him in that conversation as he gets more playoff experience, that he's not afraid to take a shot. He's not afraid to miss. And when you have that type of superstar attitude, that could be dangerous.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he got a little warm-up at Madison Square Garden in front of that crowd. And, the Sixer fans like to think that they are at the top of the list. It's, New York and Philly. And it didn't seem that the crowd bothered Young all that much. So, I mean, the crowd might think they want to get on him. That might fuel and feed him even more.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's the same thing with Westbrook. It fuels Westbrook. Westbrook just can't hit jumpers from the outside. And, I mean, Westbrook's energy was always there. And just Trey can hit jumpers. He can hit Jays from 27 to 30 feet out and silence the crowd real quick, man, real quick.
Yes, he can.
And here's the other thing. If you look at Trey's splits, he averaged more points per game on the road in this 5-game series than he did at home.
Oh, yeah.
That should tell you enough that he's not afraid of the environment.
Absolutely, yeah. He was in the 20s the 2 games in Atlanta. He was in the 30s both games up in New York. And Kevin Neghandi from Sportscenter is with us. By the way, he said he made sure you mentioned that they'll get plenty of Sixers coverage on Sportscenter when Kevin and Elle, who is a Hawks fan, will be on the desk, so make sure you're checking that out. How about the secondary pieces that Morey – because I don't know about you. This team was a 6th seed last year. It looked like after all those process years and everything you did that the arrow was pointing down. And for them to be here and put it like the mindset has totally shifted around this team, it seems like.
And it's you know who's going through that right now? The Celtics. That window to win where you're surrounded with potential and draft picks and young talent. If you don't take advantage of it, you could just suddenly flip the script where the Sixers were in that position in the bubble, after losing that series to the Celtics. And now the Celtics are, go figure, in that same position right now where the Sixers were just a few months ago. It just shows you how well Doc Rivers is as a veteran head coach and understanding playoff adjustments and understanding his players. And then, Daryl Morey, I said this last night on Twitter, he hasn't missed on any major move. And a lot of it happened on draft night. You get Horford out. You find a way to, unload that contract. You get the chance to bring in Danny Green. You get Seth Curry. You acquire George Hill, I think, is going to be fantastic for what they need as they get deeper and deeper into in the playoff crunch in games and that veteran experience. You draft Maxey. I mean, you steal Howard from the Lakers when it felt like he was going to sign there and all signs went there. Like every single decision he has made, he hasn't missed. And it could be with the decision he didn't make too. The trigger he didn't pull, and that is sending Maxey and draft picks to get Lowry. Now, that's playing a scenario we don't know. What we do know is Maxey's ceiling is, the sky, which is a great feeling when you look at him and watch him on the floor. And I thought Daryl was fully aware of, all right, I know I got 2 foundation pieces. Now let me build around them and let's space the floor. And with veteran guys, and we're seeing that pay off at least so far.
Yeah, this one should be fun. It should be fun weekend getting ready for it on Sunday, 1 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll see if Joel Embiid can go. Kevin Neghandi, it will be a fun watch as you guys have a little fun on the desk. And we appreciate your time here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Kevin Neghandi from SportsCenter. Kevin, appreciate it, man.
My pleasure. 6 p.m. SportsCenter will be talking, trust me, about plenty of NBA playoffs, and I'm sure Elle and I will be going back and forth on what we're going to have on the line in this Hawks-Sixers series. All right, be well.
All right, take care. Kevin Neghandi here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. That should be fun all week long. El and Kevin going back and forth, and we appreciate him. Thanks to Pete Thompson for setting that up for us. Those guys are old Temple, tough, Temple-made classmates.